Morning. Good morning, everybody. This is a physical activity conference. So what I want you to do, I remember that day really well. Incredible day, as I'm sure you'll agree. If you remember where you were when England won the World Cup on that day, just stand up for me.
Even if you're Welsh, by the way.
That's it, yeah.
Scottish, because you were supporting England. I know you were, secretly.
Yeah, and if you're Australian, the door's at the back. No, and if you don't remember, then stand up because you've just watched it for the first time. So stand up for me. Thank you. You've also just expended 1 calorie, and you have switched on lipoprotein lipase, which is going to stop you depositing fat while you're sat there watching us, which is a good thing. Am I wrong? Take a seat. Thank you.
Well done.
That was fantastic, Lawrence. I mean, we all remember it, and I still remember it passionately. What was going through your mind then? And equally, what sort of goes through your mind when you actually see it back now?
That was such a long time ago. I think that's in Betamax, actually, to be fair. So well done to the IT team for making that work. I mean, listen, that was the end of a long journey of a team that I was lucky enough to be part of. It took us 6 or 7 years to get to the top of the world. And obviously, we'd played Australia 6 times previously, home and away. We'd beaten them quite a few times. So it was just an enormous sense of relief, I think, when you eventually achieve what you set out to achieve. And there is nothing quite like, in sport, yes, you've got to be a very good individual to get into a team, but there's nothing quite like that shared sense of achievement as a collective. And that's one of the reasons that attracted me to playing rugby. And as you say, just a big relief. And if I'm honest, as a sportsman, with the rivalries that we have in the great sports, it's not a bad place to be when you win, Australia. They ram it down your throat quite a lot about how all the best sportsmen live in Australia. So it was great to be able to win and to call yourself the best in the world, and something that obviously we're all very, very proud of.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely, and we still are very proud of. I mean, it was such a glittering career. I mean, a long career with Wasps, with England, with the Lions. I mean, much of what we talk about now is actually about life after sport for athletes, and actually where athletes go. Were you one of those guys that had it planned? Did you think, right, I'm going to retire on this date, and then this is what I'm going to do when I leave, or was it, did you suddenly finish and think, what am I going to do now?
Well, a bit of both, really. As a sportsman, a man or woman, hopefully people don't answer that question for you and say you're retiring. I think it's about time you finished. I was lucky enough to be able to have a part to play in that. I played for England for 13 years. I played in the 2007 World Cup as well, and then I played another 8 or 9 months for my club Wasps, and we actually finished with a big final at the end of it. But naturally, you do start to think about life after rugby. You're made to retire at 35, so that was 10 years ago for me now, although it feels like a long time ago. But really, it was about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. When you're a sportsman or woman, you're very focused on what you're aiming to achieve at that moment in time, and often to the detriment and sacrifice of everything else that's going on in your life. So it was a great opportunity for me to sit back and reflect. I did put on quite a bit of weight to start with. And then, when you've had physical activity every single day of your life, you're used to that kind of mental and physical stimulus. It's quite nice to do nothing for a little while. But then clearly, I've started to re-engage a long time ago and then start to put some of the skills and things that you learnt in the sporting context into practice in the great wide world. And it is a daunting place post-professional sport. Maybe not for certain sportsmen, but for us it certainly was. But I really enjoying that and being able to put the same work ethic and the same sort of structures and belief systems that I had when I was playing sport into the other passions, whether that be my workplace with BBH or whether actually I put it into my own charity, Rugby Works.
I mean, let's talk about that, because for me, you're becoming a charity legend. I think, if you take a look at what Lawrence has achieved from a charity perspective, all of the work you're doing, particularly on the bike, is astounding. But it's Dallaglio Rugby Works, which I think really is the highlight in that. Working with kids who have sort of fallen out the mainstream of education and actually giving them a future. I mean, what's been your driver? The one thing I watch when I watch you on screen is passion. And is that, I mean, working with kids, is that a real passion for you now?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've got 3 young children of my own, but, you know, a lot of people would look at my life and think, oh, you know, things were pretty good. I was, you know, I had quite a lot of difficulty as a young teenager. I was quite disengaged. For those who don't know, I lost my sister tragically on the Thames in a terrible disaster way back in 1989. So, you know, at a critical time in my life, and sport, and particular rugby, came into my life at quite a critical time where I was starting to make the wrong decisions, and actually it gave me a structure and a belief system that allowed me to do things differently. So it's given me an enormous amount in my career, and I felt that with success, or a degree of success, comes responsibility to give back. And that's why I created Rugby Works. For those who don't know, we work with young people who have been excluded from mainstream education. That's expelled for those who want to.
That's for the older people.
But we don't use that word. And we work with young 14 to 17-year-old boys and girls, and we take them on a journey, on a development skills program through the values of rugby to get them. We're integrated into the school curriculum. And we get them to think a bit differently about their lives, and hopefully get them into employment and education. Just to give you a slightly worrying statistic, 80% of young people in prison have been excluded from mainstream education. So that is a very, very disturbing statistic. So what that basically tells you is that once young people are excluded from school, society kind of gives up on them, really, and I don't think that's right. And rugby and sports and physical activity have a huge role to play in giving people confidence, self-esteem, making them think a little bit differently about their lives. And it's something that I'm very passionate about, and it's working. You know, we are making a difference. The program that we run, Rugby Works, along with some of the other programs that exist out there, is making a huge difference to young people's lives, and perhaps filling the void that maybe they don't have at home, or just giving them a wider support network.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great example of the power of sport to change lives.
Absolutely.
I think. If you've not seen it, what we're going to do now is just take a look at a short clip. And this, I think, really articulates exactly what Rugby Works is about.
This is our 4th Dallaglio cycle slam, and it keeps getting better and better. It's about taking people out of their comfort zone, but it's not about asking people to do it on their own. It's about, you know, coming together, often with people who've never met each other before. It's got to be fun, you know, it's got to be enjoyable. Rugby Works is essentially a social inclusion program. We work with young people, boys and girls, that sit outside of mainstream education. Often those young people have been excluded from school for one reason or another.
I wasn't in the best of situations, I guess. Instead of going to school, skiving lessons, getting high and drinking and stuff, like doing things that I shouldn't be doing at that age, really.
I was being bullied, like, really badly in our school. I didn't really want to go back to school, and I just refused all the time, and I was really sad, I guess.
We go in and use rugby as the tool, as the hook. We start at age 14, we take them on a 3-year journey. We give them the support system that they perhaps lack at home, and perhaps that they lack at school, and ultimately, success for us is about getting them into full-time education or employment. It really is a life-changing program, and we're starting to see some real benefits from it. It's about working with low numbers but having a massively profound effect on their lives. Just because society has given up on them, it's no reason to suggest that everyone else should give up on them.
I'm taking my GCSEs currently, and I'm hoping to get good grades in all of them, and I want to go to college and take A-levels.
I never had any idea that I would want to go and do A-levels. I'm happy that I can move forward in my life now.
My legs are getting really tired now.
I've been absolutely amazed by the power of the human spirit, individually and collectively.
Mate, a really, truly amazing work. It's fantastic, making a big difference. I just wonder, practically, how have you seen physical activity change other people's lives? And I guess does that come from your background and how it affected you and you growing up?
I mean, I guess we all want that sense of belonging. For me, physical activity is about giving young people confidence. It's about giving them self-belief. You know, you can't immediately assume that I was lucky enough to be given a lot of confidence every time I left my house. You know, my parents would fill me with a lot of confidence, a lot of self-belief to go out there and and achieve things. I mean, my mother even got me picked in the England rugby team, so he told the coach exactly what to do. But a lot of young people don't have that necessarily, those tools, that confidence and that belief system. And I think what physical activity does is give them that. It develops them as young people. Naturally, there are the physical, emotional, mental benefits of physical activity, which are absolutely important. And it's a real concern. I've got 3 young kids of my own, and I think, for me, there's a massive gap, like most things in society, and that gap's getting wider between those that have and those that don't have. And physical activity is a huge part of that. If your kids go to a nice school and it's fee paying and independent and it's brilliant, then there tends to be hours upon hours of physical activity every single week. If they don't, and I'm not suggesting this is the case in every school, but the gap is just getting wider and wider, and it's a real big problem. And I think, the confidence, obviously, the mental and the physical abilities, but also the values of being part of a sporting environment, of working with other people, is so important. And it's interesting listening to all the speakers, this morning, touching on the real issues that we have with the levels of physical activity. It's a particular concern of mine as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you touched a number of times there on education. And we heard it this morning from Tanny. And I know UK Active really has got a drive for this, and it's something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And that is the fact that schools are driven by SAT results. They're driven by academic results. And one thing that you've been very vocal about is this idea of moving physical activity up the importance agenda for schools and actually starting to promote that. Because that social inequality piece, we can narrow that gap if we can get all schools engaged in promoting physical activity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Greg. I mean, we have a serious problem in this country, and I think we're at a moment of inflection, and we really need to think very clearly about what we're doing here. There's a massive obesity problem in this country. I'm sure everyone's aware of it. I think while we're on the subject of league tables, we're top of that table, by the way. We have a wonderful NHS system that is bursting at the seams because of some of the historical issues around the lack of physical activity and nutrition, by the way, because I'd include education of what people eat in this country. We obviously work with a number of schools, and metrics are really important to me. I grew up with measuring success in sport all the time, but unfortunately the metrics have just gone completely towards academic results. If you're a head teacher now and you're sat there with an Ofsted report, everything you're sort of aligning your aims and your targets and your objectives is all driven around academic results and perhaps not driven by nutrition, physical activity and sport. And I would urge the government, and hopefully some of the people that make policy are still here in this room, you really do need to think very clearly about baking metrics of physical activity and sport, into what schools are governed and processed by. Because if a headmaster of a school gets highly commended Ofsted report because of the number of hours a young person delivers physical activity per week, lo and behold, there'll be lots more physical activity in schools. And at the moment, I think that, yes, of course, education is important. I've got 3 young kids here, and I want them all to do brilliantly at school and go on to university if that's what they want to do. But actually, I want them to be healthy and I want them to be happy. And I really do believe that we need to do something quite drastic. And it has to be from government. It has to be right from the top, but it has to be something that's baked into the whole school curriculum. Tanny talked about 2 hours a week of physical activity. Not every school has that. Some schools have even less than that, by the way. So I don't think that's fair on young people. And there's way too much pressure put on their academic results and nowhere near enough pressure put on them having good education on what to eat and what constitutes good physical exercise. Because it doesn't have to be playing rugby for England. It can be walking to school. It can be anything. It's just a question. It's something that we've really got to sort out immediately. And hopefully, after days like today, the right people in the right positions in office will sit there up and take notice that this is a serious issue that needs to be dealt with.
I mean,
Absolutely right.
And to some extent, always the paradox for me is that active children perform better academically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, there's a direct linear relationship. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits we talked about on your happiness, your desire to get up and go to school, your mental well-being, are naturally going to have a huge impact on on your academic results as well.
Absolutely
so
right.
Really important.
So your transition, you're now with BBH,
Yeah.
a partner in BBH, working in sports marketing
Yeah.
with some of the biggest brands in the world. I mean, how was that transition?
Well, it was exciting because I was lucky enough to be on the other side of the fence when I was a sports athlete or rugby player. I think you can call them athletes now.
Now you
I think
can.
they're the same things. And, you'd be sat there and often you'd be engaging with brands and sometimes in a very positive way, sometimes not. So I was always quite interested in understanding how brands, and many of you represent brands in the room, how you can really engage with physical activity and with sports. And if you find the right place as a brand, clearly if you're a Nike or an Adidas or an Under Armour, you're already in the right place. You're on the shorts or the T-shirt or the shoes. But outside of that, if you're a right brand, you can find the right place within a particular sport or a sponsorship. Then you can actually have a really profound impact on that sport. So that's why I launched BBH. And really, the key message for me is you've heard from all the speakers this morning. We need to do something really big and exciting in this country right now to get people more physically active. Do you remember there was that wonderful campaign called This Girl Can, which I thought was a brilliant campaign, and I applaud and congratulate the people who did it. And it empowered young women and young girls to get excited and get into sport. But what it probably didn't do, if I'm honest, is it didn't sort of signpost people about how to do it and what to do. So everyone felt excited if you're a young woman and want to do exercise, but actually how do I do it and how do I create it? So I think what we really need now between UK Active and the government and brands out there, and there's plenty of them that have got the budget to do this, is a campaign that talks to young people and gets them excited about physical activity and exercise in a really positive and engaging way. Because and I know, I've got 3 young children, the way that they communicate and the way that they engage is very different to perhaps some of the ways that we do. So if you're a brand and you want to do something exciting, partner with UK Active, partner with the government, because we will make a difference, and let's get out there and do a nationwide campaign, and let's do something that changes people's lives forever.